All right, so welcome everybody to this remote interview. My name is Lisette, and I'm interviewing people and companies doing great things remotely. And today on the line, all the way from New York, I have Dr. Deborah Mashek. Deborah, you are a business advisor, a nonprofit executive, a former full professor of social psychology at Harvey Mudd College, and named one of the top 35 women in higher education. You are also an author, and you have written a book called Collabor, and it's how to build incredible collaborative relationships at work, even if you'd rather work alone. I am thrilled to be talking with you. Welcome to the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Let's start with the first question, which is, what does your virtual office look like, and what do you need in order to get your work done?
I'm of the have keyboard will travel variety. So I need my laptop and that's about it. So I always have with me this I'll hold it up for those who are on video, my little notebook. It's always with me. I've got a ridiculous stack in my closet because I also can't bring myself to get rid of these. I feel at some point I need to go back into the archive. I've never actually gone back into the archive, but I need my notebook and then I need my sticky notes, whether those are physical sticky notes for my wall. So on this wall, I've got my list of writing tasks. Around that wall are the wins. So, my win wall is with me all the time, whether they're small wins or big wins. And then there's like a to-do list, but the to-do list is actually a virtual sticky note. So like you, I absolutely love Miro. So I have Miro for all sorts of other project plans and whatnot. So as long as I have my computer, ideally with internet, and my sticky notes and my notebook, I'm good to go.
And for those who are listening, you're not going to be able to see this, but you also have googly eyes. Explain
Yes.
that. Googly eyes.
So when I decided to title the book Collabor, I did a little market testing with the title, and people either loved it or hated it, which I thought, okay, well, is there a way I can soften this a little bit? And had this idea of bringing in anthropomorphized binder clips onto the cover. So there's a group of one, two, three, five binder clips giving a high five. And we put googly eyes on them to kind of soften them and make them a little bit more inviting and to quiet the tone of the title a little bit. And then I started making binder clips. I started ordering like mass orders of binder clips and googly eyes and making them, and they're all over my house. I use them to hold my cords, my potato chip bags, my bills before they go out to the mail. So I'm now surrounded by binder clips and googly eyes.
As a side note, I have a friend who randomly puts googly eyes on things in grocery stores. So, like, you'll be walking by and there's like an orange with googly eyes and stuff. So, if you ever see that in a store in Los Angeles, you know that Emmy has been there. So, random note. So,
You
let's
guys say take a photo of that, add a hashtag, you got a campaign. I love it.
so it just makes everything more joyful. Like, there's a little of like a little cheer in a regular activity. I really like it.
I totally agree.
So the next question that I really want to start with to as a basis for this conversation to talk about collaboration, because it's really a buzzword, but let's take a step back and define, like, what does that actually mean? What is good collaboration anyway? And what would you consider the components of good collaboration to be?
Such a great question because this day and age, collaboration is a totally empty buzzword where people say it, it's kind of hand wavy, and it ends up being this black box, and we're not really sure what's inside of it. But as a social psychologist, I look at it and I think collaboration ultimately is a behavior we're trying to manifest among the people who are in our workplace or who we're working together with. And so, there's the fairly stale definition of collaboration is two or more people who are working together intentionally toward some shared goal. But the truth is, there are a lot of different ways of working together. So, our author Hillman has this great collaboration continuum where he talks about different stations or different forms of working together. And on the very low end, you could get mere networking where you're exchanging information. It's very transactional, tit for tat. And then a step up from there, you can get kind of this coordinating feeling where now, in addition to exchanging information, we're actually altering our activities in some way to meet some sort of shared goal. And then a step up from there, you get cooperating Where now, in addition to those two other things, we're also sharing resources, whether those are our people resources, our finances, our insider knowledge, our processes, anything like that. And then a step up from there, you get actual collaborating where we're actually learning from each other to enhance each other's capacity to do whatever this is we're trying to do in the world. And the behaviors that it takes to do all of the stations, to do all of this together work, can really be brought about by different environmental factors. And maybe we'll have a chance to touch on those at some point today, too.
Interesting. So you mentioned earlier that some people, so it's a behavior, and some people have more or less collaborative behavior ingrained in them. So what does that mean exactly?
Yeah. So again, from social psychology lens, this is the founder of social psychology is Kurt Lewin, and he had this famous equation. He said behavior is a function, person, and the environment. And that equation I use as a lens for evaluating everything about my world. So if I say, how do I get the collaborative behaviors from myself, my team, from an organization? First thing I'm going to look at is who are the people. So who are the individuals? And okay, so just if we think about any individual, we all have experiences starting really young with collaboration, with group work. Some of us get burned really early and we learn that other people can't be counted on, that the only way this project is going to get done is if I pick it up and I do it all myself. And that learning history becomes part of what we carry forward into the workplace. So if you are as an individual, you can have collaborative skill sets, really basic things like communication, project management, time management, conscientiousness. And you can also have mindsets like collaboration is a waste of time, collaboration is more effort than it's worth, or collaboration is how we're going to change the world. And there's no one right mindset, but as a leader, as an organizational leader, you need to be thinking about what are the mindsets of the people around me and how might that color their willingness as well as their ability to engage in collaborative work. So you've got the skill sets, the mindsets, and then you can also have dispositions. So do I believe other people can be counted on? Do I believe that I'm worthy of receiving other people's effort and concern? And am I in a position to actually be able to accept that? So those are some really deep-seated beliefs about self and others that start very early in childhood that absolutely carry forward. It's not like we just somehow shed those when we walk into our virtual or our real, not real, it's our virtual office, it's our real, but our virtual or those workplace settings. So that's what I mean by some individuals are more collaborative than others. What's fascinating is if you take a really collaborative oriented person, put them in a workplace culture that is not supporting that collaboration, so that the cultural, that environment piece, you're going to flatten them. They're going to be collaborative. You're going to suck it right out of them. And likewise, if you have environmental components that really support and augment collaboration, then if you take, somebody who's perhaps more reticent as a collaborator and you put them in that space, you can pull out some of that behavior. Ideally, as somebody who loves collaboration, I want to see collaborative individuals and collaborative or collaboration supporting environments to really have that magic of where the things that we can do together are way more magnificent than what any of us could have done alone.
How can we assess how collaborative our environments are? I mean, you've got some people at some extreme, so you really it's obvious. But for all the rest of us in sort of these average environments, how do we know if we're on the high or low side of collaboration?
Yeah, so the environmental piece, really good question. I see at least three layers. The first one is how collaborative are our relationships? And then the second layer is how collaborative, or have we really created a place where collaborative action can unfold? And this is where you get a lot of project management sort of pieces. And then the next layer up is how collaborative is the culture of the organization. So if we take each of those in turn, starting with how is this a collaborative relationship? This is what the book really unpacks. And the whole idea here is that you need to, and you can assess relationship quality and interdependence. So relationship quality is quite frankly just positive, how good or bad do I think this relationship is with my particular other collaborator? So Lizette and I, we're on a team. Wow, I really like hanging out with her. I feel like I can trust you. I feel like you've got my back. You know my needs and my interest. And wow, I see evidence that you're actually tracking those things when we're together. That totally sets the stage then for that second dimension of interdependence, which is, how to what extent are my outcomes contingent on your behaviors and vice versa. So, when we're really in the thick of it on a collaborative project, my wagon is hitched to your horse. And so I really hope you're competent. I really hope that you care about me. And I really hope that we figured out a way to kind of coordinate and sequence our work so that we can experience these positive outcomes together. So on that side, on your assessment, like how do you know how you're doing? Um, so quality is just like, how do you feel about the person? The outcome side is, have we been thoughtful about how we've structured, how we measure, and how we reward the shared work to actually nudge toward collaboration? Because what happens in a lot of places is there's a lot of rah-rah collaboration. We're going to put it as a value on the letterhead. Then all we're doing is rewarding individual achievement, and big surprise, you get individual focus. So that's the relationship side. I'll take a breath and see if you have any follow-up on that before, and I'm happy to talk about the culture piece and the action piece too, if you like.
Yeah, let's go for it. No, I've got some questions, but I think it's best if we reserve it for a second. But
Okay, great. So then on the action side, what you want to think about, and again, this is where a lot of project management is very much centered, is thinking about, do we have a process in place that's inclusive for thinking about what could we do, what should we do, how are we going to do it, actually doing it, and then evaluating not just did we hit all of our KPIs, but really thinking about, is this together work still meeting the needs and interest of the various partners who are involved? So is there something we could do differently about how we've organized this work to better address Lizette's needs and Deb's needs, and your growth interest and my growth interest and whatnot? So that's the action piece. And on culture, love this model. It comes from Brian Nosek at University of Virginia. The whole idea of, if you want the behavior, so if you want collaboration organizationally, you need to make it possible. You need to make it easy. You need to make it normative, rewarding. And sometimes if you have somebody who's really, really reticent, you need to make it required. Like if this is truly something that you want to permeate all aspects of your organization, that you've got these 5 things that you're trying to create, and there are particular levers you can throw to activate them. So for instance, if through our infrastructure, we can make collaboration more or less possible. Through the interfaces and the way that we've designed our workplaces, we can make it more or less easy. Through the role of communities and what we talk about and what we hold up and model, we can make it normative. Through a way we incentivize and reward work, we can make it rewarding and something people actually want to do. And through policies, you could make it required. So that's a quick overview of my ecosystem model, where I think, so then back to this equation. Sorry, I'm totally rambling. Back to this equation. Then you can think about, ideally, you've got collaborative people who are in those collaborative relationships, taking collaborative action within the context of a collaborative culture. And when you have all of those lined up, lightning strikes.
yeah, that's where the magic happens, right? So it's really trying to get to that. But when I hear, is this the Mashek matrix, by the way, that you've just described?
So the Mashek matrix is over on just that relationship side. So the way that you want um, high quality relationships and interdependent relationships to get some magic there. And then that's nested within this whole ecosystem model. So
Oh.
and we can unpack more about the Mashik matrix too, because there's some little hidden unexpected gems in there as well.
Well, one thing that's coming to mind as you're talking about this is that we really have to be deliberate about our cultures in order to have a healthy collaborative culture. I mean, if we can't, it just sounds like we can't leave these things to chance. Whose job is it to, I mean, where does this fall? I don't know if you can answer that, but where does this
Yeah.
fall in an organization? I mean, I can imagine like leaders need to role model the behaviors that they want to see. Project managers need to set up the environments for their teams to succeed. Like it seems like it's sort of everybody's job, but when it's everybody's job, it's nobody's job. So how to, you know, where do
Yeah.
we start?
Right. So if it's everyone's responsibility, it's nobody's responsibility to get the diffusion of responsibility. Yeah, it is totally everyone's responsibility, starting with, so I have two answers there. One, it's everyone's responsibility. And, including when you show up to do your work, are you bringing a collaborative mindset? What can you do to really be there, to be present, to advocate for yourself and skill development? This is not a skill we teach, by the way. It's some ridiculous number. 30% in my research shows that people are not receiving any professional development in how to collaborate well.
How much percent?
30% are receiving no professional development. Another like 6% are receiving a few minutes, which I think is like a Dilbert cartoon or maybe a TikTok video. It's like that doesn't so yeah, so we don't train people on this, but yeah, it's our responsibility, I think, to get the training. It's our leadership's responsibility to say this is worth providing training in. Um, my other answer is this is a total fantasy. I would love if we could start having chief collaboration officers in organizations. And I don't mean, hi, can you help this in the tech world, collaboration means like having well integrated platforms and whatnot. I don't mean that kind of collaboration. I mean somebody who's really holding the sturdy container for people to be able to develop the skill sets, for our divisions, our departments to really operating as organs within one organization. I mean, we should not be thinking about sales versus marketing or front of the house versus back of the house. These are really aspects of the organization that are driving for the same organizational goals. So you need somebody who can really hold that container and not just in an operational sense. So a lot of chief operational officers, you would think this could be something that they would be interested in, and I do see a lot of interest. But they don't necessarily feel that they can advocate for maybe professional development over there. Likewise, HR might be advocating for professional development, but may not be thinking in terms of the systems. We're feeling like they can advocate for systems to help information flow and project, flow and things like that. So that's my fantasy in terms of who should be in charge. I would love chief collaboration officers, and I would love to be hired as a fractional chief collaboration officer to test out all of these ideas like on organizational scale. So that's my on my wish list.
All right. For anybody listening that has the answer for Dr. Mashek, then please reach out. Please reach out. I can
There
put
you
you in
go. There you
contact.
go. Yeah.
Who knows,
Or
right? Who knows? So, oh man, I could go down. So, but there's a few questions. One is the use of tools in terms of collaboration. Now, you have a term in your book that I read called tool clutter. What is tool clutter?
Yeah, so Rob Cross, I don't, if you've seen his book, Collaboration Overload, is so good. And it's really about how we get mired in collaboration because there are too many points of contact, too many connections that none of us can manage. The Slack channel, the email, the this board, that board, jump into the Miro, do all the things all at once, where you end up just interacting all day, every day to demonstrate that you're being collaborative, but you're actually not getting any thought space at all. And so my concern with tools is that I hear people talking about the tools as somehow if we've got the right tool, we're gonna be able to collaborate better, as opposed to the tool somehow is going to save us, or the tool ends up being like this wallpaper that comes over, and you think it's going to protect the yucky part on the wall. But collaboration is about people and tools and processes, and the people come first. So the tool is not going to save you. And so adding more new tools is really difficult, because you're then also asking people to create the headspace to adopt the new tool and to figure it out. And then teams end up with this very precious tool where on this one team, oh, well, we only do this or we only do that. But then another team in the same organization has another precious tool. And what you've just done there is added another layer on those silos that you say you're trying to bust down, where if we get so attached to a particular tool, it means that those people are going to have a hard time transitioning over into another team, which means you're going to get less cross fertilization, less of the innovation and all that you say you want.
So what's the answer to that? I mean, so minimal tools or just really, yeah, what's
So I'm on the side of have some things that we do as an organization. So, we are an organization that uses Google Drive, or that we're a Google first or something like that. And then, but also saying, and if you have another idea that you could bring in, um, maybe that's okay to experiment, but then having some staid rules around things like where do we store documentation? I think even like how are our files structured to make it possible for other people to step in and figure out, what was going on, or there was this good idea that came up this one time in this one meeting. I don't remember, was it a picture of some sticky notes on a wall, or was it a mural board? I'm not really sure, but to try to um, stabilize that a little bit to make information retrieval more possible, I think is a good idea. Yeah, but I'd be curious what your thoughts are too on that, because it's not obvious.
No, I mean, just one of the things, I mean, I'm a tool junkie, but indeed, it's not about the tool. And one of the things that you're saying here that keeps coming up over and over, and I see it also is people are really overloaded with the amount of communication that's happening. So really, the tool's not the problem there. The problem is how we're structuring our work. And so we need to restructure how the work flows in an organization so that this need for constant messaging and constant virtual presence is not necessary anymore, right? So it's not necessarily asynchronous. That's part of the answer, but the other is just making work more visible so that we're all working from the same information. It's a tough one, because one, when you go from a virtual environment to a physical environment, you inherently become more of a documentation culture, right? And which means that all of a sudden you're managing more information. So now you have to have an information architecture set up in order to manage all this information. So it becomes like this whole new way of working. It's not just about being remote, but it really restructures how the work flows. And so I'm hearing you sort of come at it though from the collaboration side, but sort of the same angle is the tool can either confuse or enhance things.
I
Yeah.
It's funny, as you're talking, a vision just popped into my head of it's the difference of going to the fountain, the faucet, and putting my glass under there to get a drink of water versus, okay, I'm gonna create some channels, and I'm gonna create with Legos a little trough that's gonna flow from the fountain over there, and I'm gonna drink it over on this end. Like sometimes we do overcomplicate by having perhaps too much architecture and structure. But I also this is my dark thought for the day, is all collaborations end at some point, meaning um, somebody rolls off the team, somebody, gets pissed and walks away. Or I had a collaborator this past year die, and like I needed to be able to access his work, and we weren't being great about our architecture. So some of his great work was lost. So in addition to the loss of a friend and and mourning that, but this idea of if we are truly invested in the impact that we're trying to create in the world, how do we protect those investments in a way so that if something happens to us, the project can continue to have a life of its own. Yeah, that's my dark thought for the day.
Yeah. Dark and very necessary, because really when people leave or something happens and people are gone from an organization, their inbox goes with them. And with that inbox, all the conversations and knowledge that they had. So indeed, this information architecture is incredibly important. But it also brings up a question, one of the chapters in your book, chapter 6, getting the heck out. So kind of in the same vein. So I want to, when do you know when it's time to leave a collaboration? Like what are the signs? Is it, there's the same signs for everyone, or?
Yeah, and I always hesitate a little here because I realize that for a lot of us in our workplaces, we don't have discretion in which collaborations we're in. resources out. We're voluntold. We're like, this is what you have to do. So with the caveat that this advice is relevant to when for those of us who are in situations where we get to choose who we're going to be collaborating with. And I see, first of all, four criteria for which ones to say yes to, and this will also tell you which ones to say no to. So the first one is this collaboration or the goals of the collaboration actually aligned with your interest and your needs? So if not, say no, because sure, you probably could contribute, but there are so many things out there in the world that do align with your interest and who you are and how you want to show up in the world and the impact you want to have. So to me, that's, kind of filter number one is make sure it aligns with your North Star. Number two is to ask yourself, do I truly have the capacity to contribute meaningfully to this? Or am I able to contribute meaningfully to this collaboration? Meaning two things. One, do I have the capacity? So if you're already so scattered and pulled in a million directions and you don't have any marginal bandwidth to take on something new, then say no because you're going to be disappointed. You're going to burn bridges because were unable to fulfill your commitment to somebody else. And you're going to disappoint somebody else. And who wants to do that? But I also mean, just because you've been invited into a collaboration doesn't necessarily mean that you have the skill sets or the know-how to contribute meaningfully to that collaboration. So look at it and say, would I really be not just a value add, but a unique value add here? Is there something that, if I come into this mix, we'll be able to, then we're cooking with gas sort of thing. Like I can do something neat here. Um, the third criteria is, does the other person or do the other people, are they able to meaningfully contribute? Again, do they seem to have the marginal bandwidth? Because, if you've got, gosh, Liz, that's always pulled in a million different directions and she's on this project, that means people know they're going to, like, if you're always scattered and have no time, you're not going to have any time for this thing, in which case projects aren't going to move forward as quickly as they need to, or we're not going to get your best attention. We're going to get your midnight thoughts at the keyboard as opposed to your 10 a.m. fresh from coffee deep thought. And also, are you going to be a reliable and a valued contributor? Is that other person going to play the role? So is it aligned with your North Star? Can you meaningfully contribute? Can the other people meaningfully contribute? And then finally, are the resources that are set aside or available for this together work appropriate for the scale and scope of the work that you're going to try to do? So even if you have incredible people and they work really, really well together, they're going to be able to do something pretty cool on a shoestring. But if you can resource them, they're going to be able to do something even more magnificent. So that notion of people, tools, and processes, those are all mutually amplifying and mutually limiting. And so if there's a collaboration or you're like, we're going to build this great big new thing, and there are exactly no resources for it, you're going to be frustrated and disappointed. So it's probably best to say no, or rather, no, not right now. Go get those resources and then come back and talk to me.
I love it. Yeah. And I think the famous quote for people deciding on whether or not to take on projects, I think comes from Derek Sivers from CD Baby a long time ago. And he said in an interview, if it's not a hell yeah, then it's a no. Like for him, it has to be a hell yeah. And I always think about that. Like, is it a hell yeah? Like, oh, if it's then that's a good filter. So, I mean, but that's just the beginning actually, because you don't even know about the resources at that point. And yeah.
And I love the hell yeah, because when I feel like I don't go more than a day without a cool opportunity knocking. And my disposition is I want to say yes to everything. But then big surprise, ended up feeling burned out and overloaded. And then I know I'm not doing my best work on anything. And the things that I really, really, really care about, I feel like I'm disappointing myself and others around. So it all starts with that being decisive and having some intention around what do we let into our worlds in the first place, which isn't to say those other things aren't valuable, just that by virtue of our mere humanity, none of us can do all the things.
Yeah, and it becomes, and the more opportunities coming your way, the more painful it is to say no because you're only taking the cream of the crop. So it's just by nature painful. So it's just good to know that's going to be painful. So that's good. Okay. All right, we are really reaching the end of our time. So a couple of last questions. One is for advice for people. I mean, nobody's really just starting out with collaboration, right? It sort of is a skill that we're developing over time. But if you're thinking about like, how can I, if I were thinking about how can I be a more collaborative person? How could I bring my best collaborative self to the table? Where could I start after reading your book, of course? I'm going to first read your book.
Is
And then,
it wrong to
yeah,
plug the book?
yeah, no, no, it's for sure. I mean, that's why you're here, right? We want people to read the book, but like, if I wanted to do a self evaluation on like, where could I develop more? What would I do?
Here's a really simple exercise that would take you all of 10 minutes that I think is really valuable. So it comes out of exploratory writing. There's a fabulous new book by Allison Jones, by the way, on this topic. Set a timer, 6 minutes, get yourself a junky piece of paper. Don't do this in a pretty notebook, do it on the back of a bill or something like that. Write this question at the top. What are my thoughts or feelings, my thoughts and feelings about workplace collaboration? By the way, you could also do it about collaboration in my church or collaboration in my neighborhood or collaboration in the parent teacher association. But what are my thoughts and feelings? Set that timer for 6 minutes, get your pencil going and just write. Don't pick it up and see what nuggets come up about your attitudes, your beliefs, your assumptions. And I'm biased here, but look for the negatives too. Like, do you have any negative feelings? And then if so, circle that and ask yourself, where are those coming from? And start to unpack some of your habits, your mindsets, um, your heart and your head are going to start telling you something about where the first door is to start working on, whether it's your beliefs about other people and their accountability or what it feels like to you to be dependent on. So some of us that can be really uncomfortable, and start there. And then I'll say for individuals, um, if you have access to it in the workplace through coaching, or employee assistant plan or coaching or therapy or anything like that, to work on some of those mindsets is perhaps really valuable.
Oh, I love it. I recommend coaching for everybody or therapy, either one, depending on which direction you want to go. And I love that because just having an outside perspective can really help. I know with my business coach, we go through the process every single week. And and I love your tip, by the way, because one of the last exercises that we did was I had to do a 5 minute brainstorm on something I was really stuck on. And he set the timer and just waited and wrote down everything that I said. And in 5 minutes, I came up with 15 different ways of moving forward. Like some more that, some are better than others, but still it was just 15 ways that I could move forward on this problem. And he's like, okay, now pick one. And then you pick one. And then there you go. The process has started. And it was really
Really,
hard to brainstorm, but it's such a nice process. And only five, it took 6 minutes. You're right. It's just 6 minutes.
it's 6 minutes in exchange for probably 6 days of chewing on the anxiety of, I don't know what to do. What should I
Right.
do? What could I do? And we spend, but that discipline of just sitting down and saying, okay, mind, I'm going to ask you a good question and let's see what you got. Because, there's a lot of wisdom inside if you create the channel for that to come up and to be curious about what you're going to say to yourself. I love it. I use it
Yeah,
every time I
indeed.
sit down to write an article, or often even if I want to say something interesting in a LinkedIn blog or a LinkedIn post or something like that. I'll start with, what really is the question I want to answer here. And yeah, I love free writing.
Yeah, it's a very powerful tool. So, for all the people out there that have not tried it, this is a great tip. All right, very last question, super easy one, which is if people want to learn more about you, where's the best place to find you online?
Yeah, so collaborate.com or debmashek.com take you to the same place. And there you'll be able to subscribe to my One Simple Tip newsletter, or if you prefer to connect over LinkedIn, I'm on there every single day. All my social platforms are there. So that's really the best way to connect. And I love continuing the conversation. So yeah, please reach out and holler if you'd like a chat.
Love it. We'll put all of those in the show notes too. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge today. I really hope that people go out and get the book, and I really appreciated your time today. Thank you.
And thank you for this incredible podcast. I was so delighted to discover it, and I'm trolling through your archives now. There's so much wisdom in there. So thank you for your contributions to the world.
Oh, thank you. And for everybody else, be powerful.